An Italian journalist freed after 3 weeks in Tehran's notorious Evin prison is back home. 29-year-old Cecilia Sala, touching down in Rome as a Milan court reviews the case of an Iranian engineer arrested recently in Italy and wanted in the United States. There's the Italian Prime Minister stating that this was the fruit of intense diplomatic negotiations. For more, let's cross to Tehran and correspondent Saeed Azimi. Saeed, it was a 29-year-old journalist who had a visa to work, who was arrested. Thus, there were questions as to why she was arrested and questions as to the conditions surrounding her release.
The first question that you mentioned, François, about why she was arrested, it is still unanswered to us as well. The Iranian Ministry of Culture released a statement shortly after the news of Cecilia's arrest was published that she was arrested on the charge of violating the Islamic Republic's laws. This statement did not clarify what laws she had violated. There was a video of her for Quora Media that she released, and she was not wearing her scarf and her hijab. And there were speculations that she was arrested because of publishing that video. But I actually met Cecilia Sala in Tehran on December 14th. So she was fixing her hijab whenever it fell off. She was very cautious about that. I don't think that was the main reason she was arrested. And as for the conditions for her release, these are not yet specified yet. So what we are hearing, there are speculations, both in Tehran and in Rome, that Iran had a diplomatic request, a political request from Italy, which is mainly surrounding the JCPOA revival negotiations. The Iranian deputy foreign minister is set to meet with French, British, and German political directors of the foreign ministries of these three countries in Geneva on Sunday. So the speculation in Tehran is that Cecilia Sala was freed so that the EU representative Enrique Mora wouldn't fixate on yet another humanitarian case in Tehran, because we already have the case of three French hostages in Tehran.
Three French hostages in Tehran, and there were these questions over an Iranian engineer arrested recently. The U.S. wanted his extradition, and he's filed a motion for his imprisonment to be lightened to house arrest.
Yes, but the house arrest has been declined, and there are speculations yet to be confirmed that Mohammad Abedini, the Iranian engineer arrested in Milan, will be freed soon, some say tomorrow, after President Biden visits Rome.
Saeed Azimi, many thanks for that live update from Tehran. That it's the Iranian engineer accused by the United States of supplying drone technology that was used in an attack on U.S. forces in Jordan. Well, for more analysis, let's cross to Uppsala, Sweden. Rouzbeh Parsi is the head of the Middle East and North Africa program at the Swedish Institute of International Affairs. Rouzbeh, more questions than answers, as you heard from our correspondent there, when it comes to the specific case of Cecilia Sala. But it does seem as though this is part of a wider game, what the French pointedly call hostage diplomacy on the part of Tehran.
Well, this is always the suspicion, at least, when anyone, particularly Westerners, are imprisoned in Iran, since the judiciary in Iran is very not transparent and very inconsistent in what it claims, what it accuses people of, and what they imprison people for.
In this specific case, what do you make of the timeline here? You have Italian Prime Minister who last weekend was in Mar-a-Lago. She's going to be welcoming Joe Biden soon on his last trip abroad as U.S. president. And then this announcement that surprised some.
Well, yes, but I think it plays into the larger picture of everyone wondering what Trump is going to do once he becomes president. And so everyone is trying to prepare themselves and, to the extent possible, ingratiate themselves with him in order not to end up on the wrong side of the stick, as it were, once he goes into the White House again. And of course, for Iran, this is a particularly difficult moment because for the last year, they have lost a lot of their influence and perceived ability to deter attacks. And there's now talk both in Israel and in Washington, D.C. of maybe Iran being on the ropes. One could finish them off once and for all.
And the maximalist sanctions that Donald Trump put back when he became president the first time, those have not gone away. And with a weakened Iran, what's his next move going to be when he becomes president again?
Well, the problem here is, of course, that his appointments have been rather contradictory. So we have a lot of people who either claim or who will be appointed by him, and they have very different positions on Iran. Some of them are very hawkish, and they believe that this maximum pressure that he initiated when he was president last is working, supposedly. And there are those who don't want to get bogged down into yet another military confrontation in the Middle East, and therefore not interested in pursuing, if you want to call it, an Israeli line of keep pushing Iran. So at the moment, it's very difficult to see which side is going to get the upper hand and whether Trump himself is going to be personally involved. Because, of course, for him, more than anything else, it's a question of whether he can make a deal that will be better than the nuclear agreement that Obama managed to get. And that could be one of the stepping stones towards getting a Nobel Peace Prize, which supposedly is something that he's very much coveting.
Later in this hour, Rouzbeh, we're going to be hearing from Philip Turle about the press conference that's just happened with the visiting U.S. Secretary of State here in Paris with his French counterpart. The two of them giving a long leash to Syria's new leaders 1 month after the fall of Assad, saying there's hope for Syria's future. You talk about Iran being on the ropes. Is there a scramble for the Middle East happening?
Well, I think everyone understands now that a lot of the things that were taken for granted as being facts no longer are. They are all put in question. So now it's a question of who can create new facts on the ground. And of course, Israel here is in the driving seat more than anyone else, since they have created some of the new facts and they are using their military to the fullest extent in order to destroy their enemies. And the United States so far has not restrained them in any visible manner, at least. And so the question is whether Trump will let them continue doing this, or whether when he comes in, he wants peace and quiet, which then either means that things will go more peaceful or that the Israelis will need to do whatever they need to do now before he comes into power.
And getting back to this hostage situation, because we heard an interview this Wednesday morning with the Nobel Peace Laureate Narges Mohammadi. Speaking to French radio, she expressed a lot of concern from her house arrest for one of those three French hostages, Cécilia Colère. She's saying she's in bad shape in Evin prison. Any thoughts on what Emmanuel Macron can do at this juncture?
Well, I think the Iranians are in general not particularly impressed or interested in Europe anymore. That, of course, doesn't mean that they don't recognize that Europe can still hurt them quite a lot. So I think at this point, it's whether the Europeans have a common position or whether the Iranians will try and deal with each member state, especially the big ones, and whether they think that releasing some of these prisoners might help them not to end up being put under more pressure by Europe. Europe has one main leverage at this point, and that is the snapback function of the nuclear agreement, which, if they initiate it, would return all UN sanctions on Iran. Now, Iran is already, in a sense, inundated by sanctions, so it's not that it's going to be a huge difference, but it will make everything else already difficult much more difficult. So I think they would want to avoid that. And maybe, just maybe, this would be one of the avenues that can be pursued in order to avoid that, and also then result in the release of these prisoners.
Rouzbeh Parsi, many thanks for being with us from Uppsala, Sweden.
Thank you.